Okay, as we start Chapter 7, Complex Cognitive Processes, I want us to begin with metacognition because really that is the basics for all that we do. It is thinking about thinking is what metacognition is, and we're going to talk about that. So, mastering basic facts and skills is important, but learners gain little if they can't also do something with what they've learned. We talked about in the prior chapter 3 times 5 equals 15. Yes, we all agreed, but if you can't understand why it equals 15 other than the calculator says so, then you really haven't mastered the knowledge. You know it, but you can't apply it. Metacognition literally means thinking about thinking. We do this, or I'd like to think we do it often, and we don't even think about thinking about thinking. You've learned that you can acquire only so much information so fast. You can't possibly absorb the contents of an entire textbook in an hour. Remember, we talked about memory. On my best teaching days and your best learning days, you still only walk away with how much? Half is correct. Only half of the information. So if the class lasts an hour, you walk away on my best days and your best days with 30 minutes tops. You've also discovered that you can learn information more quickly and recall it more easily if you put it into some sort of an organizational framework. We've built some concept maps, some compare and contrast stuff. We've done those things, and it does make, since 80 to 85% of the population are visual learners, those type of organizational charts do help us learn the material better. You've learned that you need to periodically check yourself to make sure you remember and understand what you've read. You read a little while, you stop, and I think we can all agree there's times when I'll be reading a book and get to the very bottom of the page and can't tell you a thing that I've read, and I have to go back up and start again. The more learners know about thinking and learning, the better their learning and achievement is likely to be. Bottom line. So as children grow older, they become increasingly aware of their own thinking and learning processes and increasingly realistic about what they can learn and remember in a given time period. And we need to be modeling that as you're reading a story to your classroom. You need to be stopping periodically and going through the process orally of what's going on in your mind. You're thinking about thinking. If Daniel's using metacognition, he might allocate adequate study time for the exam. He might identify a suitable mnemonic technique that will help him remember a difficult piece of information, and he tests himself to see if he is sufficiently prepared for the exam. He is using metacognition. That is illustration of metacognition if Daniel's doing those things. All right, you also see a video there with a metacognition video. Take a look at that and see. Let me know what you think. Text me your answer. I also attached here some effective learning strategies. In the book, it says, thanks in part to maturational changes in the brain, children and adolescents gradually become more capable of controlling and directing their cognitive processes in their efforts to learn something else. Now, you know that when they're smaller, it's going to be hard to keep their attention. We talked about that in the other chapters. So as they're getting older, they can kind of control their behavior and have that self-regulation in order to be able to gain the knowledge they need. Information processing theorists have described several processes that may facilitate long-term memory storage, rehearsal, elaboration, organization, and visual images are some of those. Consider the simple idea that you need to devote more study time to more difficult material. Children don't use a seemingly obvious strategy until the 4th or 5th grade per research. So they're older before they begin to realize that they need to devote more time. And I'm not sure all students, even at that age, get it. With age and experience, children also become more aware of which strategies are effective in different situations. Even so, many students of all ages seem relatively uninformed about effective learning strategies. Now, we spend a great deal in my Education 1030 college experience class taking the learning strategies test, which you did as well, determining what kind of learner you are. Then in turn, that kind of opens up a whole story of how do you learn best? What can you do to support yourself? Now, remember, metacognition is thinking about thinking, and it's knowledge and beliefs about one's own cognitive processes, as well as conscious attempts to engage in behaviors and thought processes that increases learning and memory. Metacognition is of utmost importance.